Hi everyone, it's me again, and Squish Gang is disheveled because Gus keeps jumping in it. And today we're going to revisit the concept of true crime content and review the recent new wave of also unethical practices that have been going on and that have grown in frequency as the genre has gained popularity. But first, links, socials, ways to support the channel, including Amazon wishlist, Patreon, and YouTube memberships, all down below, along with my sources, as well as an email to contact me if you want to suggest content long form or other such needs. 3 parts of the video today. Part 1, we're going to talk about the Zav girl situation that occurred in July. We're going to talk about Annie, Elise, X10 to Life, and the situation that got pushed under the rug with that channel. And part 3, kind of a discussion on true crime as a commodity through the application of journalistic practices per the CBC in Canada. Now, let's get right into it. Part 1, Zav girl. On July 15th, Moist Critical / Penguinzo released a video called Horrifying YouTube Situation, which initially brought the situation to mine and many others' attention, with this video having over 4 million views. I was emailed, however, to cover this relating to Annie Elise. This situation was also involved with that. To quickly summarize the situation, Zav Girl is a true crime YouTube channel who was covering the case of a young boy who was murdered by his stepmother after being reported missing in Colorado Springs. The child was found dead in a suitcase. From this point forward, now that we're more than a minute in, trigger warnings for murder, unalive, self-unalive. I also should have said this at the beginning, but I didn't. And just strong topics, because I try to avoid talking about it because I don't believe in sensationalizing these things. It's just... So I'm going to be putting in examples over time throughout the video that might be an issue. But the child was found dead in a suitcase with gun and stab wounds, to put it as lightly as possible. The child's name is Gannon, and the stepmother was eventually caught after lying to authorities multiple times, and DNA was found on a gun and traces of it in the car as well. This case is currently in trial. This is relevant because apparently in the United States, you can just access court documents, whether you're just a civilian or not. So with that, this is where Zav Girl's involvement gets a little bit more sinister. So what happened was Zav Girl requested access to court documents. I think we need to understand that in the rest of the world, this is not normal. Not actually, even then, in the US, requesting court documents for your true crime YouTube case is a little bit much for me personally. I need to preface with, I do not really appreciate true crime as a genre. I think my issue with it is whether it's helpful or not or what have you. Way more often, I'm noticing bad creators than there are good. It feels like you have to sift through way too much crap to get to decent ones. And I think that's something that I don't appreciate. I also find the content to not typically be very involved. And a lot of the times it's just recycling information found by people with journalistic integrity and then essentially just removing that journalistic integrity for a sensationalization of someone's death. Typically death too. That's the other thing. They don't talk about tax fraud or scamming or other things. They talk about murder and S-word crimes, typically, something along that line. So once the case went to trial, Zav Girl received the files, also received autopsy photos with that file of Gannon.
That was surprising, but she said that she had made an official records request and then received all of these documents, which she posted on her Patreon. I'll go ahead and play this clip from her apology video where she tries to explain that this is a little misleading. She wasn't just charging for autopsy photos, she was actually charging for everything, which included autopsy photos.
Zav Girl alleged that this was also publicly available information, but then for some reason put it behind a $3 paywall on Patreon. What she did to supposedly make this okay was made a slightly edited voiceover video that put the pictures together.
I spent time reviewing what I received so I could provide more info from the trial. I believe many of my images were already shown during the televised trial, and I saw the photos on other public YouTube channels that live streamed the trial and shared the evidence. I didn't think any of the images were new. These photos were already public, although the video I put together with the coroner's voice was my own creation. I chose to put the video on Patreon because of the sensitive nature of the evidence. Putting the evidence behind a paywall meant added security, and I naively thought they wouldn't be made public. The video I created with a voice from the coroner wasn't meant to be shared outside of Patreon, and I chose not to put the photos on YouTube, a public forum, where the views would have allowed me to make more money, and the photos would be seen by more people.
Obviously, this video is no longer available, and I would not have been able to really access regardless, because I was not going to give a true crime YouTuber money, because I don't, like I said, I know people are going to call me a hater. To me, personally, in Mika's opinion, it feels dystopian to sit in front of a camera for YouTube and just dramatically recount a murder case. I don't like it on television either. A lot of people in my videos on Eleanor, I had 2 videos on Eleanor Neal, were like, oh, well, you're a hypocrite because I said I didn't watch it on TV either. I think it's cold cases are kind of one thing. If you're trying to figure out what happened with something, I could suppose there could be a little bit more leniency on that. But when you're just telling the story and then like dramatizing it, and when I was watching Elise, she really bothered me too, because it was like, it felt very robotic, and that there was like specific like transition words that were being used, like, and the most chilling fact is, and what's most upsetting was really the fact of,
and that's what makes this case so unbelievably devastating and just outright sickening. Now, one of the most chilling aspects of this case was that the family actually had security cameras all throughout the interior of their house. As they entered the home, they quickly realized that they were walking into an absolute bloodbath.
And the thing is too, and I already know you in the comments. I already know where you're going to be in the comments. No, I'm not jealous that these people make more money than me. I don't want to make money like that. And I'm not saying every single channel is bad, but you need to put your own pride and ego as a consumer of the content aside and understand that there are many bad ones. It's the same way as like mommy vloggers. There are a ton of bad ones and very, very few good ones. And to critique the genre, given the strong correlation to its bad content, I don't think is a crime. Autopsy pictures behind a paywall. People noticed it. Videos came out with thousands and thousands, if not millions of views. Zavgirl came out with a video called My Apology to Gannon's Family and Everyone I Hurt, which right now has 138,000 views. It is 3 minutes long, 2.4 thousand likes, and 17,000 dislikes. In that video, Zavgirl claimed that the images were public already and that there was no reason that they couldn't be put behind a paywall with the edits that she made.
I spent time reviewing what I received so I could provide more info from the trial. I believe many of my images were already shown during the televised trial, and I saw the photos on other public YouTube channels that live streamed the trial and shared the evidence. I didn't think any of the images were new. These photos were already public, although the video I put together with the coroner's voice was my own creation. I chose to put the video on Patreon because of the sensitive nature of the evidence. Putting the evidence behind a paywall meant added security, and I naively thought it wouldn't be made public. The video I created with a voice from the coroner wasn't meant to be shared outside of Patreon, and I chose not to put the photos on YouTube, a public forum, where the views would have allowed me to make more money, and the photos would be seen by more people.
This confuses me on one hand. For one, she's trying to seem like a thorough investigator by getting the court documents. But then, and like putting together a video, and then it's like, my work deserved to be compensated type approach. But then raises her hands of like, anyone could have done it. Anyone could have done it because it was publicly available. So it's like, you want to be seen as like this person who's like thorough enough to access documents. But on the other hand, be like, well, the documents were public, so whatever I did with them, like, doesn't matter. Apparently, according to Zavgirl, the paywall was designed to act as an added layer of security that the contents would not be wrongfully distributed, despite the fact that she also, on the other hand, goes, well, if you just Google it, you can just find it. So then which one is it? Because if the case was for the safeguarding, you could then donate the money to the family directly. That would be assuming that there's even any moral compass there. And also, like, regardless, it's horrible to distribute the pictures to your audience. Because even if it was Googleable, I can assure you that a lot of people don't look at like a true crime YouTube video and go, I'm going to start searching for their autopsy photos, even if they can find them. But then you directly saying to them, I have these autopsy photos, I have the scoop, can then muster up a curiosity that wasn't already present. Not everyone thinks like you. I think that's something that wasn't mentioned and is quite obvious to me. A lot of these true crime YouTubers think everyone thinks the same in how they like approach content and how they approach stories, and that everyone sees something and just gonna sleuth and try to find everything, despite the fact that they don't have the revenue generation cycle that would contribute to wanting to do that more, which is another part of the puzzle that I don't appreciate. Because on the surface, there's already an issue with taking publicly accessible information, sorting it, and putting it behind a paywall. Everything I've ever made is my own original content, and is my ideas, my opinions, my construction of something that's put behind a paywall. I never just put things together and, clump them together and throw them up. Like, that would be... So sometimes when I research videos, I make documents of, just Google Docs of, all the links I need and what order everything happened, and I'll make a timeline and I'll write it out. It would be as if I took, a screenshot of that, or, the Google Doc itself, and put it on Patreon. It was just oh, here's, the stuff that you could easily have found for free, and just do that. The 3-minute apology was designed to kind of rectify the situation, with Zavgirl bringing up that the Patreon is no longer up, but doesn't describe why that actually happened. And I think that's not really relevant, because it seems like it was actually Patreon's doing. So she's almost, if that is the case, allegedly, hypothetically, in Minecraft, then she's taking Patreon's action and trying to twist it into her doing for good, which is weird and gross. And within 2 weeks of this happening, Zavgirl just started uploading like normal. Now, before I get to the second part, I'm just getting really tired of true crime YouTubers and weaponizing. It's like a weaponization of the fan base a lot of the time too. I cannot tell you enough when I talked about Eleanor Neal, how many people were just you're fat and ugly, and that's why you don't like her, because she's a skinny, pretty legend and you're just a stupid bitch. It would be stuff like that. That's not at all relevant. And when I tell you the amount of testimonies I've had in my comment section that said either let's say my family member that passed away due to XYZ, it is my worst nightmare to be covered by these people, or people who were actually covered by true crime YouTubers contacting me and telling me how they got harassment from their fan base, how they got a bunch of other people coming out to them, or the video just so horribly represented what happened and was just so blatantly incorrect and lazily constructed that it has caused them to have this deep set sadness further from the coping they already had to do about the situation. So what, these people that can sit in front of a microphone, it takes 6 hours to make a YouTube video, and let's say they research for another 6 hours, they do 12 hours of work, and then make more than they make in a year in a month. Because let's be real, if we look at Elise, she's got about 200K of views per video, more or less. That's 8 to 10,000 US dollars, I would guess, in simply AdSense, assuming that they're monetized. I don't know. I have YouTube Premium. I gotta be real, so I don't see when the ads are. If they're not, just the ad reads alone on 200,000 average views of video would be at least 100. It's usually $100 per 10,000 views. That's what I meant. So let's say 30,000 views is $300 ad read average typically. This obviously hugely depends on the person. This is just from asking other YouTubers. I knew they do sponsorships and my own kind of integrations and rates and that kind of stuff. Let's say 30,000 is $300. 300,000 is $3,000, right? But the other thing is that it's kind of an uptick. It's not quite consistent. Once you get past a certain point, it's once you're past 50,000 views, it doubles. So I'm just saying she's probably making several $1,000s a video on just the ad reads, let alone if there's actually videos that have ads on them. The other thing is a lot of people will go well, true crime videos get demonetized, so your claims of that they're not making money on them or you're making money on them are false or whatever, and they do the sponsorships to put food on the table or whatever. Personally, for me, I would not sit on something that and push this work that I think is unethical to make the money. And I think these people make so much money that they could easily dial back one video a month and be more careful about the other ones. I'm just tired of the excuses that come with this content, because then you're getting people like Zavgirl putting these videos behind the paywall. People like Eleanor Neal is doing it wrong and then taking down the videos without telling anybody and never addressing anything. Or, now that we're going to get to part 2, Elise, who also put crime scene photos behind a paywall on Patreon. It happened again. Well, it was actually seemingly happening at the same time, according to the coverage that I've seen. So let's get into that, okay? Upon the Zav Girl situation happening, there were conversations about kind of just the general ethics of true crime YouTubers, and it was coming up. And a few weeks ago, so around August 1st, an email hit my inbox discussing almost an identical situation that had happened with Zav Girl. And I'm just going to say alleged because Elise, we'll see in a response later, was running around calling Harsh Reality like defamatory and stuff. And like, because the true crime YouTubers are mad loaded, I don't have the money for the lawsuit. You know, because I don't have all those Patreon dollars. I think this is the first time in a while that I'm like genuinely emotionally charged because I'm just so tired of this shit. The situation with Elise did not get remotely the same notoriety. I think I found 2 videos that ranged around 20,000 views or less each. Yeah, one of them is 15,000 views. The other one is 25,000. So one at 15, one at 25. So the video that broke it to me, that was also linked in my email, is a video, and it was not sent by the creator of this video before the people in the comments try to claim that it was like the person trying to get notoriety. Not true, did not happen. Emailed by just a random person. And again, I also look into these things clearly before I make the videos. So the video is from a content creator called Jewels of All Trades True Crime. And the video is called Zav Girl and Elise have both crossed the line in the true crime bar Gannon Stouch and Adrian Jones. I need to briefly say before I get into this, Jules goes on this like rant about like the government and stuff. Cool and slay. Live your truth, girl. Love that. I don't necessarily co-sign all of the opinions that she has and the way that she approaches them. But I also like don't disagree with the fact that there's like presence of surveillance and stuff. I just want to say that because I just don't want to get it twisted that we share the same opinions on everything. But also, I'm not like hating on her. You know, like I said, live your truth, girl. Period. Because also, like, she's not putting autopsy pictures behind a paywall, so I'm not really going to be pressed. You know what I mean? In the video, Jules describes another video by another creator and their interactions with Elise on Twitter named Harsh Reality. So I'm going to go to that video first, and then we're going to hop back to Jules after. So Harsh Reality's video came out on July 17th and discusses how Elise, upon the Zav Girl situation, allegedly removed images that were $1 to access on Patreon of Adrian Jones. And this was the claim that because she couldn't put that content on YouTube because it would get like her channel deleted because of how gruesome it was. Maybe it's because the platform doesn't believe that you should be making money on that content. Dare I say, maybe all instances of someone's brutal demise aren't up for your pockets to get lined. Consider that, maybe. I want most of y'all to consider that because it seems to not be something that people are thinking. They're like, if the case exists, I can take it and monetize it however I want to. We are literally talking about the last moments of someone's life. We're not talking about interactions between creators. We're not talking about even because the thing with like predatory internet actions, for example, like where's a Colleen Ballinger and stuff like that, those need to be checked by the community because that's like a current event that is happening and something that is within the hands of YouTubers because if she tries to come back, she's making money. It's on the same platform in the same universe or the same section of work, for lack of a better term. We're not law enforcement. We're not lawyers. We're not social workers. We're not psychologists. We're not any of these things to be doing the most. Jules has a degree in investigative forensic science, according to her. I'm not gonna say that that's not true. So she has a degree in investigative forensic science. So she has a bit of a perspective on this and she's quite against it, right? So there's actual like precedent for that more educated opinion because the removal of educational practices that often lead to professional practices, I also think are a lot of what leads to this, and that will be within the third part. Also, when I was doing this investigation for this video, it turns out, which I was not aware of before, there's like a hyper niche community that like reacts to and like checks other true crime channels. So like, you know, you might not know, but there's like the creator like Amberlynn Reed and Foodie Beauty, the girls, they have like a reaction channel universe that kind of like highlights like the bad actions that the girls have, GRLS. It's kind of like that. That's like the only thing I can really like compare it to. Or like the typical like influencer commentary community, a la like The one I can think of right now is Nick is Not Green, but I feel there's obviously way more. But I'm just like drawing a blank right now. But point is, there's like a community that, or like drama commentary, the drama channels, like Peter Mon, Adam McIntyre, Dustin Daly, whatever you think about them, it's not relevant. I'm just saying there is almost like a drama community of true crime, which I have stumbled upon, which is interesting. And I actually do appreciate that, because my issue with true crime initially on my first Eleanor Neal video was that didn't find that presence to really exist, and it just came upon me what was happening, and I was like, I guess I'll talk about it. So Harsh Reality's video just kind of talks about the image that was on the video that says, if you're interested in accessing an uncensored version of the video, including footage and images, I've made it available on my Patreon page at the lowest $1 tier. Please be aware of the very sensitive nature of the material and take care of your well-being. On like a little scribble, you see the picture on screen with the picture of the kid. I just need you to put this in your mind right now. Let's say you're watching the news, okay? Americans, what do y'all watch? MSNBC, CNN, Fox, that's all I can think of. Or if you're in Canada, CBC, CTV, Global, TVA, I guess if you're French, right? Imagine you're watching like the news, right? And they're talking about like war crimes. And it's an uncomfortable smile, by the way. It's like I'm just like visceral, but I'm trying not to like lose my marbles here. Imagine you're watching it and they're talking about the conflict in Ukraine, okay? And they say Russia enacted in certain crimes, and I'm trying to be careful so that my video doesn't get age restricted, but Russia enacted in certain crimes. To see the images, you must subscribe to Global TV Plus. Because some of these news have like plus apps so you can stream it on your phone and stuff. But imagine if like you're watching the news and they're like, to unlock further images that are more gruesome, you need to, it's like, that's insane. That's so nuts. And like what? Like this would never, ever, ever fly. Just let alone for legality's sake. But then for some reason, these true crime people can do it seemingly unscathed. Zav Girl had videos with millions of views. And like, while her views are a little bit, you know, in the shitter, the thing with Zav Girl is that her videos were very erratic in views in general. So, however, I will say there is a steep decline in the viewership, averaging typically before 10 to 30K. Now they're not even breaking 4K. So yeah, I guess it tanked. But still, in the grand scheme of things, as far as the community, it's pretty unscathed. And Elise has no issues, because no one's talked about this except for Harsh Reality and Jules, who are in the true crime community. I kind of hope in talking about this conversation can span wider, because I'm not a true crime creator. I'm a commentary creator, I think, even though no commentary channels put me in that box normally. But I don't know what I do. I just do whatever. Anyways, back to Jules' coverage, because hers is a bit more thorough. She opens up the situation coming to light and discusses this kind of interaction that the channel Harsh Reality had with Annie Elise on Twitter. The responses were only on Twitter and not like on a community tab, not on a video, just an argument. And listen to this response. So this is Annie Elise X10 to Life on Twitter wrote, because Harsh Reality has decided to make serious and defamatory accusations and then block me from responding, I will respond here. I have never sold autopsy pictures or graphic images that have not already been shown by mass media outlets. Which ones? With their pocketing the money directly. Also, again, with that level of gruesome nature, I haven't seen, to be fully transparent, obviously I have not seen the images because it's been taken down before my knowledge. But just the like phrasing of, if you are interested in accessing uncensored version of the video, including footage and images. The post you were citing was a video with YouTube approved news clips, negating the responsibility, family interviews, and news images. No additional images / videos than what was already been seen by the public or reported on by media outlets, but rather what YouTube wasn't approving in my video. So it doesn't make sense. Because if it's widely available on YouTube, then why is it not working in your video? Clearly, if it needed to be censored that much, it's because they don't want something that gruesome on the platform. And I think you should just respect that. It's not like you're having like a based take on like capitalism. Because sometimes like you'll get like your videos removed if you're like shit talking somebody too much, who's like doing bad things. Like you're saying, like, you know, again, let's say with Colleen, if you're being, my Colleen Ballinger video got demonetized because of the nature of the conversations that I was having. That's one thing, because that's like up for debate a little bit more, because I'm just talking about stuff that happened on the same platform, that's like happening on the platform, that has to do with the platform. So that was a bit weird that those, and I was also not talking about like, you know, murder. I was talking about, you know, exchanging messages with kids and stuff, which again is very, it's super serious, but it's not literally unaliving somebody. Maybe you should just be respecting that they shouldn't be up, instead of this insistence on that those things you've collected need to be profited off of. Again, when I know you're not stressing over money, because every video I've watched has this like super intense intro with then like an ad read, also on products that are kind of scummy. I'm gonna be nasty for a second. Sleepy teas and gut health drinks, like, sounds like a lot of pseudoscience-y type stuff. You're talking about, you'd had this like, it looked like some kind of knockoff Metamucil, and it clears your skin. It's like, what?
This is 10 to Life with Elise.
Let's talk about gut health. It's something not a lot of us talk about, but it is really, really important, because our gut health is connected to our brain, and it really controls everything: energy, mood, skin, everything. And taking care of our gut health is so important.
Allegedly, hypothetically, in Minecraft, I'm just like I said, it's something dystopian to me, having like an intro about like a person's life ending, and then being like, you know, I have trouble sleeping being a busy mom. I'm gonna have my sleepy time teas. Okay, I need to keep reading. The reason I removed the video was because for the non-Patreon members who did not see what the video actually depicted, it could have been perceived that I was selling private graphic images and videos of abuse or autopsies. The thing is, with the nature, this is something that needs to be acknowledged as well, with the nature of the United States and the way that they have I think it's called the Information Act or whatever, that you can access court documents at your own discretion, that makes the nature seem way less private than it actually is. Because in the rest of the world, that's not happening. I mean, obviously, there's going to be probably a couple of countries where you can, but like, I think people need to consider, and I say this all the time, the whole world isn't America. America isn't the planet, right? So like, let's say I got arrested and then I went to court. You can't access my documents. You can't request my documents. If you request my documents, they're going to be like, are you her lawyer? Are you a cop? Are you an investigator? And you say no. Or if you lie, they go prove it, and then that doesn't work. They're not giving you shit, right? So this whole concept of like, well, it's publicly accessible. It's publicly accessible for weird people who are like trying to get information on a case that doesn't involve them a lot of the time. This is so much nuance. This is so much nuance, and I think a lot of people are not going to want to take it as nuanced as it should be, because then it's challenging their internal moral compass on the content that they consume. But like, if we remember to a couple years ago, Tati Westbrook was suing, was it Without a Crystal Ball? Her name is KJ or whatever, because she requested a bunch of court documents and then somehow tracked down Tati Westbrook's dad through collecting the court documents. So it's not like the misuse of court documents and the distribution of them isn't already something that was pretty big on the platform and is something that has been abused by civilians in the United States. So that's my thing. I'm not great on the concept of accessing the documents themselves when it's something delicate like this. I think they should really only be available if the people involved are professionals in the context of working with other people, teachers, cops, jurors, or like judges, psychologists, social workers, stuff like that. That's my personal opinion too. A lot of this video is just my opinion, so like, please take it or leave it. I'm not gonna be mad either way. I understand that this was due to my own miswording on my original video, which I immediately corrected and clarified via a pinned comment and have screenshots of. I would never do that, nor would I ever want anyone to think I would do something like that. People have seen the video, know that there was no such content in it. Everyone is welcome to come to their own conclusion, but those are the facts. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to email me at 10tolife@gmail.com. This is a very serious accusation. I will continue to breathe into baseless claims. The thing is that you admit to doing it in the statement. And like I said, I just think if you can't get it monetized and it's relating to something not involving you and the end of someone's life, it's still wrong to forcibly post it against a paywall so you still profit off of it when the platform is clearly not wanting you to profit off of that specific thing. That is so dire and so serious. Because like I said, I know there's a demonetization problem on YouTube. I get that. But there's a difference for when it's like you're gossiping too hard about another person versus like pictures of the last moments of someone's life. And I think the gravity of that distinction is not being weighed properly. So Jules goes through Annie's community tab to see if there's anything that's addressing that or the Zav girl controversy. I also went beyond where Jules went, as in like this video came out a couple weeks ago. I checked from today down and there's also nothing addressing it.
Notice that one of the biggest names in the true crime community had nothing to say about what Zav girl did to Gannon and his family. And I'm going to prove it to you. I've pulled up her profile on YouTube and I'm going to refresh it so you guys can see that it's nice and fresh. Look, this is about her bullshit interview with Jennifer Coffindaffer that people are not happy about. And then the stuff with Lisk, stuff about Brian, a poll, 9 days ago, Sound of Freedom. Oh, it's amazing. You'll go see Sound of Freedom and talk about how all of this is so unacceptable. But it's being brought to your attention that you did something along the lines that made people uncomfortable, and they're the ones that are wrong for feeling that way. That's not how it works. Look, she never addressed 2 weeks ago. She never addressed what happened with Zav. Now let's go to her Twitter so I can prove it there too. Let's refresh. Okay. Stuff about the Lisk podcast. And this is where she makes this comment. It takes a special kind of person to call you out and spread lies and then block you. Okay, well, again, if you're trying to come at the conversation from a separate account instead of where your name and your face that's well known to the public is going to be the one responding, I don't want to hear it either. Woman up.
I also, when I was looking through her community tab, Annie Elise, I just felt like it was dystopian to have these titles and community tab posts with like barfing emojis in relation to crime cases. And I'm looking at the thumbnails, I'd be like, those are drama videos. Those look like drama commentary videos. But then obviously there's some images of like weird looking people. I'd be like, I don't know, it looks like some sort of weird like story maybe. It's also just like the bold red text with the like disgusted faces that you know she has to pose for. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've never posed for a thumbnail like in my life. Every thumbnail I have is literally just a screenshot from a random frame that I pulled somewhere within the video. Two situations, Zav Girl and Annie Elise, bring forward this concept of how important it is and how you need to be mindful about how you manage and distribute media, even if it has already been distributed, because you can expand things to a whole new audience. You can expose things to a whole new audience. There's so many times where someone I watch all the time covers something in a video, I've never heard about it in my life, and I'll go check and they got like 3 million followers. I'm like, I don't know who that is. There are 8 billion people in the world. They're not, just because something is public in one specific circumstance does not mean it's something that's public and known to everybody on earth. That's not something that's good enough to cover when it's something so serious. With this, we'll move on to part 3. So I feel like given the sense of nature to the content and the nature of responses to criticism, there are always tend to be emotionally charged. And I think that's fine and acceptable. I think that if we're talking about something as serious as like cases in true crime and people did not have any emotional charge, I'd almost be like more worried. I'd be like, how do you have just no thoughts and no feelings about this? Here I first want to discuss the concept of journalistic practices and how true crime brings a unique moral dilemma to the YouTubers' profit cycle and the commodification of these cases. For journalistic practices, I'm going to refer to CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's journalistic practices, which is a federal news corporation in Canada. And I know that Canada has pretty strict guidelines compared to countries such as the United States when it comes to journalistic practices. And I keep referencing the United States because these cases are covered by Americans. But I think given the sensitive nature of the content and how a lot of these people try to put themselves in a morally grandstanding position that they're just doing it to like protect people and unearth cases and do XYZ, I think having a strong set of guidelines is acceptable. So there are multiple sections on the website that are subsectioned, and I'm just going to try to read like some of the highlights. So one of them relates to the interview process of children. That's not necessarily relevant in this case. There's also a section called Protection of Youth within the journalistic practices, and it reads as such. We should be aware that provincial laws on the protection of children and families generally include restrictions on publication of information about children or youth in care of the state or who are involved with the justice system. So they're saying they make a point to limit the focus and positioning of the content on children who are involved in a crime case or children or of the state, which means, for those of you who don't know, if they've been taken away from their family for XYZ reason. There's also a section relating to children and social media, which reads as such. We take care to protect the privacy of children involved in the use of social media. We are especially careful to assess the impacts when dealing with those aged 50 and under who may lack the judgment required to consent to interviews and publication of their information. We avoid providing information that could identify them because this puts them at risk for online predators. When contacting children through their Facebook or other public sites, we follow the standards set for children's participation applicable to all other platforms. Now, the reason why I talk about this is because, and I brought this up in my Eleanor Neal video, my first one, which I'll tag down below, but a lot of the times they make these dramatized stories about families. And then they talk, and even if the siblings are still alive, and let's say one family member passes away, they'll talk about the siblings, they'll have their pictures, they'll have their names, and they're putting out information available and pushing it to their huge audiences. Because this is the other thing. A local news that covers a situation like this doesn't have the same reach as someone with 2 million subscribers. I think that's also something that they don't know, is like a one-off story in like the Saguenay Saint-Jean local news is not going to have the same reach as Elise's 900,000 subscribers are going to go. Because, you know, Saint-Jean-Saint-Richelieu's got like 70,000 people or something. That's like a really random comparison, but like I'm just saying is that people are not considering the gravity and volume that their audiences have. In my most popular video on the channel, I was talking about the influencer era, like the beauty influencers and the span that they have and the reach that they have. And I was comparing their views to like the Super Bowl and like the Grammys, the Oscars, like the World Cup. Influencers have a level of reach unprecedented by mainstream media platforms. So there's a section as well involving crime and police reporting. And the first section is called Respect for the Suffering of Victims and Their Families. And it says, in approaching victims of witnesses of tragic events, we carefully weigh both the public interest of full reporting and the need to show compassion and restraint. This is what I was talking about. They do not show restraint. When Elise couldn't have the parts monetized in the video, she put them on Patreon so they could be forwarded to an audience and monetized. That is not showing compassion and restraint. And this is to what she's admitting to in the post. I'm not even like conflating it to something that it's not. This is based off the information I provided from her own statement. In such situations, we are considerate and use judgment. We take care to not exert undue pressure from an interview. That's, again, not necessarily relevant because they never really... Some of them interview people. I believe Kendall Ray does. And again, I'm not saying they're all even because I've heard pretty good things about Kendall Ray, and there's another channel, and I'm upset because I don't remember what it's called. And people talked about it a ton. And it's like an acronym. I don't remember, but... I'm just saying there are people that do interviews and that kind of sort of process, but we take care not to exert undue pressure from an interview. When images or audio clips could upset part of the audience, we choose them carefully. We limit their use to what is necessary to the understanding of the subject, and we provide audience advisory before use of any of it on our platforms. Do you see what's missing? Do you see what's missing from actual journalistic practices? There's a section also called Depiction of Violence. I'm not going to read everything again because it talks about war and disasters, that things are not relevant in here, but there are relevant points. One saying, we respect our audience by assessing the impact of our images according to the time of day and the context to the program in which such material is appearing. Again, I think the context of the sheer reach of these people's content is not being considered. Rather, the more viewers who watch, the more money will be generated. If it is necessary to use graphic images, we will add a warning ahead of their use. They do that. The true crime people do that. I will open my hands to that. They typically, well, it's also like pretty clear by like the nature of the channel that that's relevant. If some of them probably don't, though, to a certain extent. And you know, but I do my understanding when I was watching Annie Elise's videos that she did have that sort of warning. Eleanor Neal did too. Zav Girl probably might have, maybe. I didn't really watch her content too much, but I will concede to that, right? We should familiarize ourselves with any laws or regulations about the depiction of violence. I don't think that that's necessarily being looked into prior to starting a juicer channel, such as a true crime channel. And then the last section is related to self-unaliving, if you know what I mean. We are sensitive at handling of S-word attempts, and desperate acts. In particular, we avoid describing an act in detail and illustrating the method, and we consider the risk of glorifying this behavior or influencing vulnerable people. Annie Elise's video that came out today as of filming September 1st literally detailed gruesome details about how the girl's life was ended, how the attacker tried to end the life of her mother, and then how he came out of the house covered in blood and stuff like that. And then there was another video after that was a murder. It was an unaliving S-word, self-unaliving, and detailed the method of that and everything. So again, examples of not following journalistic practices, despite, again, I think if these true crime people didn't position themselves as people who were like trying to unearth unsolved cases and trying to be like good for the community and trying to really help people and who have faced such tragedies, and instead we're just like, I'm just trying to like juice the views, and we're honest about like their actual intention a lot of the time, I think that wouldn't bother me as much. Because the thing is with this, right? True crime is one of the most profitable avenues on the internet right now. True crime podcasts and true crime channels are insanely popular. Annie Elise started her channel only a year or so before I started really using mine, and she has almost 1 million subscribers. And it could be a huge quality difference too. Like, I'm not saying that's the only reason why I'm not at 1 million subscribers almost, and she is. Like, that's not my problem. But I'm saying, like, the lightning bolt of success for starting these channels and fulfilling that market, I'm noticing to be a lot more rapid, a lot more profitable than other avenues of the internet, such as commentary, which is super saturated. And then a lot of them just recycle the work that actual journalists did without even just removing the ethical or limited ethics that even present themselves in journalistic practices. So the combination of the internet's sense of instant gratification, the lack of guidance in the journalistic practices, and the clicks and revenue reward of sensationalization, I think have just pushed a lot of true crime into a place of like, where I just look at it and I'm like, every time a true crime video is coming up on my YouTube, I'm not interested. Go away. I just have a big problem with it, and I just don't think people are brave enough to talk about it a lot of the time, and I'm gonna get so much flack, and it's gonna suck. And like, if the comments get turned off, I've never turned off comments, but if the comments, like, I just stop looking at them, it's because I'm just like, not into it, you know? And I think it's not necessarily the fault of the consumers. I think when what you have available to you isn't good, then what you consume isn't good, you know? I think the responsibility is to the people who profit and generate this content. And I think that needs to be considered more. And I'm enjoying the fact that there seems to be a growing community of people to check that. Anyways, in conclusion, I am a true crime hater. Sorry. I know a lot of you are going to feel bad. I know a lot of my subscribers are fans of the content. We don't have to agree on everything, though, you know, and I don't look down on you for consuming the content. Even a lot of people, honestly, like, for the people that are good at doing what they do, I don't look down on them on making the content. I just think that there needs to be checks for the people that are sensationalizing these things, and it just makes me feel so yucky that I just had to sit down and talk about it. Links, sources, ways to support the channel, YouTube memberships, all that stuff down below, along with an email to suggest longer form content. And before the people in my comments start trying to call me a hypocrite, I briefly mentioned victims of the actual crimes. I'm coming for the people that talk about them. And these are very different things. I just feel like I got to do so many caveats because things like this, I think people will purposely twist my perceptions and opinions on. But yeah, that's all. I see y'all soon. Have a great day. Bye.
My dog is deaf and blind.